Okay, so thank you so much. I'm so excited to speak with you, Angela. First off, I love speaking with everybody that looks like me or looks like us on this show. It's like one of the highlights for me, right? There's a lot of us out here, and we're not going first. um, I know that you have been involved as a member of the UBCP and ACTRA. Can you
ACTRA.
ACTRA.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's easier. UBCP ACTRA. Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about what your work is with ACTRA and the Advocacy for BIPOC performers?
Yes. I'm no longer a board member, but from 2018 to 2023, I served on the executive board of UBCP ACTRA. That is the autonomous branch of ACTRA in Vancouver, BC. And then we have a national organization, ACTRA, right? We have two different union agreements. So UBCP ACTRA deals with our own agreement here within the province of BC and the Yukon. And ACTRA has an independent production agreement for the rest of the country. So it's a long story how it ended up that way, but that's the difference. And so when I joined as a board member, I was elected, and I realized that how important it was to be invited to the table, so to speak. There hadn't been anybody who looked like me at the board table, the executive board table. So it was really important for me to bring forth the issues that BIPOC performers had. And it was apparent that no one had similar experiences. And so when there was, for example, discrimination on set with one particular network, and a non-union member had gone forth to the news about it, I realized then that we had to step in and do something. If it happens within our jurisdiction, then it affects our members. And I thought it was, really incumbent upon us to step up and really start looking out for the best interests of our BIPOC performers. And so it went sort of something from that to hair and makeup equity, which is a huge issue amongst all BIPOC performers all around the world, actually. And so we've had numerous discussions that you can find on YouTube, and SAG-AFTRA has also had the same discussions. You can find those on YouTube, and even some international ones in the UK and Europe. So I became very heavily involved in that. I've been a performer for quite a long time. And when I first started, I used to bring my own makeup to set because I was never really assured that they would have my shade. And if they did, it would be sort of, insufficient. So I'd always bring my own custom blended stuff to set. So at least I knew they would have the right shade for me. And I would also get my hair done before I started my job, before I, went to set, because also there weren't many stylists. Well, there weren't any stylists that could do my hair. So, so those things kind of have existed for decades, and BIPOC performers have just dealt with it up until recently. Along with, the Black Lives Matter movement, these sort of conversations started to come into more of the foreground, right? And I really believe that something had to be done because there was an inequity there, right? Yeah. If I get hired to, go on a show, but they don't have craftspeople who can do my hair and makeup like my counterpart sitting to my right, that's not right, and that's not fair. And even when we went into negotiations, it was still an uphill battle to have that acknowledged, that producers, they're the ones who are creating the workplace. They need to hire people who are competent, who could do, hair and makeup for everybody, not just one subsection of the population. So that's the work that I, was really passionate about. And it was brought to the attention of our national organization. And luckily, the executive director there, Marie Kelly, and Eleanor Noble, who was the president of ACTRA, really took this to heart. And Marie Kelly filed a grievance in the province of Ontario with the Canadian movie producers, motion pictures, Canadian Motion Pictures Association. She filed a grievance with them to say that, you're not providing the same, equitable services, and you need to do something about that. And from there, we have found great growth, great conversations. Even the team at UBCP ACTRA, our own committee, our own BIPOC committee, had discussions with the craftspeople from the IATSE, that's the hair and makeup people, to let them know the damage that had been done with our performers and what they could do to rectify that. So all across the country, our union has brought forth guidelines, protocols, lists of equipment, everything we could do to say, here is the information. You need to become better skilled at your jobs, right? So that when I come and sit in the chair, that I can relax and know that someone is competent to handle my hair and someone is competent to handle my makeup. And I can go to set feeling great and fantastic, just the same as my counterparts. So that is the work that I'm, really passionate about. We're still bargaining for these things. We're about to move into negotiations, the American and the Canadian side. So those are some of the things that we're actively working towards to get them entrenched within our union agreements so that our performers can feel confident when we're working with our fellow craftspeople on set. I have also had conversations with craftspeople who have acknowledged this issue. They are upgrading their skills. They're going to classes. They're becoming better educated. They are hiring BIPOC artists that weren't even a part of the union. They're giving them opportunities to become part of the union because they're already skilled. They were just underemployed, right? So they're becoming, they're becoming a better crafts guild so that they can work with our performers and we can feel confident and beautiful and that everything is equitable, right? So, that's something I just feel really passionate about. I'm no longer serving on the board, but I will always be interested in supporting and advocating for performers in that regard. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Look, if you're making a change to make sure that, BIPOC performers look the way they feel confident, that is a big help for all of us, right? It's going to make the actors' performances a lot easier. It's going to make everything better. I know I've had this conversation with Tracy Ellis Ross, and she's talked about this a lot. I'm curious, from your perspective, when you were a member of the board and even beyond, do you feel that there have been any strides for BIPOC performers in recent years, or do you still see the industry falling kind of short?
I would say definitely within the last 4 years, myself as a performer, I've had increased opportunities for roles. So that's the really great thing. And I've been at this business a really long time. And so for the most part, my roles were kind of on the periphery of the storytelling. I played more nurses than I care to mention, right? Or police officers. I mean, I enjoyed them. I enjoy working with people. But for a while there, that seemed to be all that was available. Or I would actually just wait to see in the breakdown African Canadian or African American in the breakdown. And then I knew that I would have a shot at that. On occasion, I would go up for stuff that didn't mention any particular ethnicity, and sometimes I would book that, and that would be great. But that was more the exception. I'd say within the last 5 or 6 years, it's really changed quite a bit. And there's just a lot of opportunity to be series regulars, to be guest starring, like having bigger, meatier, juicier roles, part of the main storytelling. And we've also had a lot of, BIPOC filmmakers are coming forward with their own stories. whether they're, Asian Pacific Islander stories or Indigenous stories, or, Black stories. All sorts of different stories are now coming forward. And I believe that the more different stories that we can tell, we really raise the bar in the excellence of this industry, right? Everybody's story deserves to be told. There's so many commonalities as we strive in this human life that we all need to just sit back and just open our minds to other perspectives, right? There's much more in common than we have than there are differences. Mm. And when we get to have those stories told, then we get to be in charge of changing the narrative.
Amen to that. So, during your time on the UBCP Actor Executive Board, and it sounds like you've been exposed to a lot of things that might be challenges for BIPOC performers. Can you let me know, what are some of the most significant challenges that you might have faced for pushing for systemic change? Or if there's anything that, people like me or audience members can do to help?
I think really the main challenge was to get allies to really acknowledge and listen. I think that would be the main thing. I believe that most people are good on this earth, right? But sometimes when it comes to challenging the perspective and how they do things, that can be a challenge, right? They don't often see, racism or discrimination or things that are systemic until you point it out to them, right? They think it is the exception, or they think that certain things are just discrimination if it's really egregious, right? And that isn't the case. Particularly within this industry. A lot of the stuff is just like microaggressions on the daily, when you go to work, right? So I've had many performers reach out to me, email me, talk to me, DM me about something that happened on set. And most of the time we feel disempowered to actually do something about it. So part of addressing that is getting allies to really stand up and be aware of these things. So that, if I were to make a complaint about, something, well, everybody knows it's me because I'm the only Black person on there, right? And an actor doesn't want that kind of attention, right? You just want to be able to go to work, do your thing, and go about your business, right? We don't want to be worried that we're not going to get hired again. We're going to be thought of as difficult. That's already a huge issue to be a Black female performer in this industry.
Yeah.
Any request that you make, any sort of thing that you're asked to do and you don't want to do it, you're seen as being difficult, right? And that you have no rationale to want to have things go differently, right? So it's a really big consideration for our allies to actually be aware and stand up and say something. If you are number one on the call sheet, if you are the producer, right? It's really, really beneficial if you actually stand up and say, how can I, help you? How can I better serve you? How can I help this situation? How can I make you feel more comfortable? And sometimes, it can be the higher ups, like the producers that, are part of the problem, right? So you need somebody on your side to just speak up for you and just point out some things that may not be obvious to other people, but is quite obvious if you're a person of color, that you're really being transgressed upon, right? And like I said, everybody wants to go to work and be, have it be free of harassment, right? That's part of the privilege you have as being a union actor, is that you want to be able to go to work and have it be free of harassment, whether it's sexual harassment or racial harassment. You just want to go to work and have a good day. You're not looking to make any trouble. But you are, you can be made to feel very uncomfortable in certain circumstances, and you have a right to speak up, and you have a right to have a safe and respectful workplace.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And thank you for highlighting that word difficult, right? I know that that's a word that can be used as a label for people I think I heard it primarily, Will Smith mentioned it with, I forget her name, Janet, and it brought that word to the forefront of people's attention. So thank you for bringing awareness to that word and how it's used. I'm curious though, what advice would you offer to maybe younger BIPOC performers who are just now getting into this industry And, we know that this industry has been slow to address issues of, representation and inclusion. Like, what advice would you give them when first stepping on set to navigate this world?
I would give them the same advice as I give to any performer. Be excellent at your job. Be excellent at your job. I was kind of raised in an era where I had to mind my P's and Q's. I had to watch what I said. I had to even watch my face, right? Sometimes I'd just be sort of sitting there quietly thinking whatever thoughts, and someone thinks I'm in a bad mood, right? And that's I'm not doing anything, I'm just thinking my own thoughts, right? And so I always tell young performers, I go, just be really good at your job. Be really good at your job, be confident at your job. And if you see anything that is, making you feel uncomfortable, check in with someone. Check in with one another. Make sure that you are safe. Reach out to your union if you're a union performer to make sure that, your rights are respected when you go to work. It's a really, really difficult environment in order to speak up for yourself sometimes. It really is. So, really rely upon your colleagues. Sometimes you kind of feel like you're being, gaslit, right? And, you have to follow your gut and your intuition, and you're not, right? But I think you just need to find out what your rights are, get solidarity with your fellow performers. And if you don't have it there, go to your union. Go to your union rep. If there's something that's really troubling you, talk it out with somebody. I think you just have to practice saying certain things in order to be heard. I've had to be very, very mindful with my language because, I'm not there to hurt anybody's feelings when I go to work, but I'm also not there to take the brunt of someone's ignorance either, right? So I have learned to kind of speak up for myself. I have to be mindful about how I say it, but I had to practice that. I really did, because you just feel uncomfortable. I think what people forget is that unless you're really, really well known, actors are not like, sometimes we're kind of on the bottom of the rung, right? When we actually go to work. I know it seems really odd, but sometimes you are when you have directors and DOPs and, production is a huge deal, right? And so they often just kind of think of you as a widget to produce their product. And on occasion, you run into other people who, believe that that you're really important to part of the storytelling. And then sometimes you run into people who don't actually treat you that way. So learning to stand up for yourself. And if you don't know how to do that, then reach out to your colleagues and just have someone to talk to. I think I know a lot of performers who've reached out to counselors to talk about some of the stuff that they've gone through on set. This isn't particularly true for women. So they get their support off set with counselors to deal with, whatever situation they had to deal with, right? So, but don't be silent about it. Don't do nothing about it. Even if you don't want to say anything at the moment, go and tell somebody, when it's safe to do so. Call your union rep, right? It's a little harder if you're not a part of the union because you don't really have anyone to go to. And that's the kind of the benefit of being a union, is that you have other resources at your disposal, right? But please talk to somebody. I think sometimes just being heard is part of it, right?
I totally get that. In recent headlines, we've seen things like Amanda Lestenberg go through all sorts of attacks online for her performance and her role. We've heard Giancarlo Esposito talk about how at one point in his career, he was thinking about hiring a hitman just so his family could get the insurance money because he was, having a really hard time with being able to afford to make a living wage. I'm curious though, like in the work that you do with the UBCP and ACTRA board, was there any particular impactful moment in moving the needle toward more equitable opportunities or environments for BIPOC actors? Like, what is that effort like?
Just generally speaking, it was exhausting. It was exhausting, and it was one of the reasons why I decided not to run anymore. It takes up a huge amount of my time, and I'm an actor. I'm unemployed, so I really have to hustle for work. Being on the board is you get an honorarium, but you don't get paid a living wage or anything, right? So all of these things, they took a mental toll on me, I have to say. I found it really, really exhausting. So I just thought, I'm going to take a break. I don't know if I'll return, but I just needed to step back and take care of myself. And yeah, it was emotionally exhausting, having to explain things over and over and over again. And also to not have things prioritized, right? When times are tough, most people's attention goes to, we have to take care of this first, right? Like COVID hit, it changed the whole industry, changed how we worked. And then we just have to worry about COVID. We just have to get through this. And I'm like, no, we still have to talk about equity. We still have to talk about representation. We still have to talk issues. And sometimes people didn't want to do that because they didn't see it as important. But I never believed that. Even in times of COVID, there are a lot of people who are impacted, but people of color are also really impacted, or have been really impacted by COVID, right? So people kind of forget that, right? So even when times are tough, the talk about equity and representation should never disappear from the table. People think, okay, well, we solved that. We solved that. We had these shows. We're done. No. I don't believe that. I always believe that those things should continue to be talked about, and goes back to the conversation I had about having different stories being told and who gets to tell those stories, right? All of it really is about just raising the excellence in our community and in our storytelling, because as performers, we are the storytellers for our humanity, really. Right? I mean, look what people depended on during COVID. They depended on Netflix and all streaming. They just said they watch TV and, whatever. They turn to the artists, right? So I think we have a responsibility to really speak up when we create stories or become part of other people's stories. I think that's really important. It's always been important, like, for example, in the Indigenous community. Mm-hmm. They're very much a culture that's rich in storytelling, and they should be well represented in the story so that we can learn about one another, right? But where we came from, or the land in which we stand upon, we should learn about those things. Those things benefit not only our humanity, our place in the world, but also for our children, right? This is part of our shared humanity, right? That should be celebrated, right? Not oppressed. It should be celebrated.
Totally agree. With what we've seen you in recently, right? Like mm-hmm. I'm curious, in what ways do you think the current landscape of Canadian film and television compares to Hollywood in terms of meaningful roles and visibility for BIPOC performers? I'm pretty sure From is a Canadian produced show, right?
It is an American produced show that's filmed in Canada.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, how do you feel that it compares in your experience, at least as far as offering meaningful roles for BIPOC performers in both Canadian produced shows and American produced shows?
Not specifically talking about From, but when your initial question is about the Canadian versus American, right?
Yes.
I think, well, sometimes it's a question of numbers, right? Of all the people, like, California, the amount of people that live in California is the entire population of Canada, right? So we're a really huge country, but with not as many numbers of people as there are in the States, right? So I think when it comes to talking about, representation, I think in a lot of circumstances, our Americans are far ahead in a lot of ways, right? With the amount of stories that they tell that come from a sort of more diverse perspective, right? And also, there's more money and a tradition of, Hollywood, right? So there's more money here in the States to do that. However, the Canadian film industry is also quite powerful. And I think they're, particularly in particular urban centers like, Toronto and Vancouver and Halifax, they're really growing their filmmakers, their diverse filmmakers, so that they can feel free to step forward and tell their own stories in that way. So they're really completely different on the scope, right? On the scope because of the nature of our countries, right? So more particularly talking about From, though, we have a very diverse cast, so that's fabulous. We have Catalina Moreno Sandino, she's Latina, and we have Harold Perrineau, he's our, also one of the leads, so if you just sort of look at the whole cast, you can see, and Ricky, Asian, performer, so we have a little bit of taste of everything. And I think it also represents sort of all of the different storylines of people, coming to From. They come from all different backgrounds, right? And they're coming from all different walks of life. So it is a little bit about, America, right? In this small town. So there's all different sorts of people in From. And they're just part of this crazy, horrible thing that's going on in town, right? It's been a real pleasure to really delve into all the characters and all the storylines and the LGBTQ storylines that we also have, right? So there's also that perspective as well, right? So that's what I really love about this show, is that everybody has a chance to tell their story from whatever perspective that they have. And it's not seen as something sort of exceptional, We don't always have to talk about, oh, well, I'm the only gay in town or something like that, right? Like, they don't have to talk about it. They're just living their lives, right? Or I'm the only, Black sheriff in town, or we don't have to talk about it. They're just being themselves under these exceptional circumstances, right? And that's what I mean about representation. It's not always talking about the differences. It's about leading these human lives, right? Trying to survive all the monsters and all the craziness that happens in this town. And that family is not only family created, or your family of origin, but the family that comes with trying to survive with strangers under difficult circumstances and supernatural circumstances. Yeah.
I love this show. I love the diversity.
Yes, I do.
Show. I love everything about it that I've seen makes it even if it's not said to be exceptional, it feels exceptional to me just because of what you said, right? All of these different backgrounds from all of these different people. I'm curious, without giving away too much, what can fans expect from your character, Bakta's return in season 3? And how does she fit into the broader narrative of the town's mystery?
That's a good question. How does she fit? What can we expect in season 3? I believe that we'll just see a different side of Bakta. When she first arrived, she's pretty surly, right? Kind of like, what, who are you? Get away from me. That type of thing, right? She's used to being in charge. She's driving her bus. She's trying to get things done because in her mind, it's her last ride before she goes off on vacation. She has a whole other life that she wants to get back to, and the circumstances are preventing her from leaving. So in season 3, okay, well, we've been here for a little bit now. And how is she adapting? And I think that you'll find you'll just see another side of Bakta that you didn't get to see before in season 2.
Just out of curiosity, would you be able to share any memorable behind-the-scenes moments from filming season 3 that maybe helped deepen your connection to Bakta or the From storyline?
Memorable. I think they were more along the lines of like horrible, right? To tell you the truth, when I first came in season 2 as a performer, and I got to see one of another actor, and he was dressed as a creature.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, that was kind of terrifying. It was really creepy. You have to understand that I didn't see season 1 until I got to Halifax.
Okay.
When I was cast, I didn't know, because MGM Plus didn't show in Canada, so I didn't really see season 1. I just saw a trailer. So when I arrived and they were walking, this gentleman, and he was kind of, it was horrible. So I've seen a lot of really terrible special effects. And I also remember when Bakta comes on the bus and she sees these passengers that have been murdered. Well, in my mind, I was going to see some sort of special effects done.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I fully expected to walk up on, they're going to call action, but they were going to have kind of like, the stuff there.
Yeah.
And there wasn't anything. There was nothing. And I was like, can you talk me through this? And the director said, okay, come in. We shot some other stuff. Look at this stuff first. So we had a bit of a talk. And I was like going, oh, okay, that's what it looks like. Because I wasn't sure exactly what kind of state that they had been left in.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of wanted to see that so I could give a really good reaction.
Oh, boy.
But I think that was the one thing sort of, I got up on their action and there was like nothing there. I was like going, okay, is that part of a head or is that part of a butt? Like, I just needed a little boost, but so I had to put those visuals in my head and then kind of react appropriately and in character. I mean, how does one react to seeing somebody's guts being pulled out? Would you scream? Would you be quiet? Would you just have your mouth hung open? So I think that was the sort of the memorable thing for me, was just sort of walking on that bus and going, oh, okay, there's nothing there. How does one react to a corpse being, cut open and shredded? So that was my memorable experience.
Well, you did a great job. You did a great job. You're definitely one of my favorite characters to look forward to. It looks like you're taking over. I don't want to accidentally say anything, but I'm really excited for fans to see your work later in the season.
Me too. I just wanted to say, though, I really enjoyed the cast. They're amazing, Ian and Harold and Catalina, and Liz, and I'm kind of run out of names because there's so many of them, but the most talented performers. And every time I'm around them, I just feel so grateful to have this opportunity to just play in this crazy world. All the stuff that John thinks of is just kind of twisted. So there'll just be a lot more of that in season 3.
I'm so excited. Hopefully he'll let us know why this show is called From, because I still don't know.
Go and ask me.
Well, thank you so much. I know you're very busy. I've taken up so much of your time. I wanted to thank you so much for all of your efforts on the show, especially all of your efforts in the UBCP ACTRA. That to me touches me more than anything else. Anyone who's advocating for BIPOC performers to have, equality in the industry is way more important than anything we're talking about. So thank you so much for all of your time and effort to that.
You're very welcome. It's my true passion, and it's my way of giving back to the community. I didn't have that coming up in this business. and I wanted to leave it a better place. And I think I have, and you know, in my little small way. I mean, it's not something that one does, but you know, by themselves. I had a whole team behind me. I had a whole committee behind me. I had members behind me. It's not something that one person does. A lot of people have to be part of this effort, right? And there was great solidarity with my union colleagues, and I'm just so grateful to have them in my life.
Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. I hope to speak to you again in the future. Thank you so much for this.
Take care.
Have a good one. Bye.
Okay.